Hey everybody, Eric Schweitzer here from The Gamer, and I'm here with Jade King, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Extraordinaire. Hi Jade.
Hello, you've got me again, Eric. I'm just playing all these video games. I can't help it.
You are such a gamer. We
I
played
know.
Spider-Man 2 last week. This week we're looking at Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and first of all, tell me about the event itself, because I don't know anything about it. What did you do? Where'd you go?
It was pretty chill. It was at Square Enix's offices in London. They kind of just shuffled us into a room after giving us a presentation and said, here's 2 demos of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Fill your boots, and we'll kick you out afterwards. So that was kind of it. It wasn't necessarily extravagant or crazy.
And how long did you play?
So they gave us 2 demos. One was Cloud and Sephiroth going up Nibelheim, and it was more of like a flashback linear sequence. And the other was just outside of Junon Harbor from the middle of the first disc, I think, if you're thinking about the original. But that was more of like an open world sequence. But despite that, they did lock off some of the region, so we couldn't wander too far or get distracted while running through the demo, which I did anyway. I probably spent like 45 minutes in this demo that they said was going to take 25. But yeah, it seemed like they wanted to give us like some more linear narrative stuff and also show off how the gameplay has changed and how they're going to mess with open world stuff, because I think a lot of people are curious about that more than anything else.
Gotcha. Okay, so I finished Remake. It's the only Final Fantasy game I've finished.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I didn't play the original, but I did get the impression at the end that it was quite a bit different from the original, and that it was almost sort of like a meta commentary on the original. So we don't exactly know what's going on, right? But it seems like there's like a divergent timeline situation, right?
This game is fucking crazy.
Crazy. Okay, so this sequence with Cloud and Sephiroth, this would not have been in the original, right?
This is in the original, right? So this is a flashback sequence.
Okay.
I think this is going to be at the beginning of the game, because you know at the end of Remake, you leave Midgar, essentially.
Yeah.
Then you go to a town called Calm, which is like a little village. You go to an inn, and then Cloud kind of regales the party about when he first met Sephiroth. And this is that sequence.
Gotcha.
But it seems more in-depth and playable this time around. And obviously, at the end of Final Fantasy VII and Intermission, Zack comes back to life, who dies at the end of Crisis Core and is already dead throughout all of the events of the original Final Fantasy VII. But with him being alive raises a lot of questions about this section and whether we've got like different timelines and stuff going on. I love it, but I hate it, because this game could go anywhere, and I think that's kind of incredible.
So another thing I noticed from your gameplay here is there's a lot more characters. There's I'm gonna try to guess their names. One's like Omega Red, or is that an X-Men character?
Red 13. You were
Red
close.
13. I was close.
I don't know what the 13 stands for.
The Great Ninja Yuffie. I know her from Kingdom Hearts.
Yuffie, yeah. Kingdom Hearts original character.
And the DLC, which I did play. Who else? Oh, I saw... Wait, are there any more? Did you play any more besides those 2?
So, I played as Cloud, Sephiroth, Barrett, Tifa, Red 13. Not Yuffie, surprisingly. She showed up, but she wasn't playable.
Okay.
I see. Now I think I've missed one. But I think that... And Aerith, of course. R.I.P. Maybe.
And what did you think of the new characters?
I think Red 13 was cool. They play a lot like Tifa. They're very melee-focused, fast-paced. They don't have any ranged attacks, which might bum people out, but that kind of incentivizes you to switch between different characters. They have like some abilities that can buff defense and attack, and one of the big new features this game seems to have, if you press R1, there's some like synergy-esque attacks that seem to act on a cooldown that you can use with 2 characters that kind of like either have like attack or defensive capabilities, and with like really flashy over-the-top animations. It's very anime, but I think the majority of the characters I played as in the demos I played were from the last game, so it felt more iterative than revolutionary, which I suppose a lot of people are expecting from this because it's part 2 in like a 3-part trilogy.
Okay, yeah, because I saw some of your combat. I saw some boss fight with like a dolphin.
Oh no, the dolphin's your friend.
But there's some other sea monster that you're fighting.
Yeah, you fight a giant sea monster. This replaces a sequence in the original where you go to like the town of Junon, and you use a dolphin. No, you kill a giant monster to save a little girl, and then the dolphin helps you jump up to the top of the city, essentially. But in this one, the little girl calls to you when you go into town, and then you save Yuffie from the giant monster, and you finish the monster off by like jumping on top of the dolphin like an anime character and like slicing this giant monster to pieces. It is ridiculous, but like a lot of stuff in Remake and I guess Rebirth now, it honors the original while also like willingly reinventing all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, cinematic, really silly. I was thinking that the combat looked pretty much the same. I know you mentioned these like combo.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, we still have our ATB gauges or whatever. You still have your command menu. Like, it plays pretty much the same, right?
I think so. I didn't get to see too much of it. I think the camera placement is a bit different, and like getting in and out of battles feels a bit more seamless. But I do think they're very much like, oh, here's some new features and new characters, and that's going to be the variety you're going to get here, as opposed to reinventing the combat system. Because I think some people were buggered off that your levels don't carry over, but I think that would screw the progression, like if they did that.
That's probably for the best. I mean,
yeah,
like,
that's what I thought.
When you have a 10 out of 10 game, you probably don't want to change that much about it.
No, that's it. And it's like, I don't know, because if you were just OP at the beginning, it wouldn't make sense, especially because these are 3 games that are telling the same story. But I think in terms of like progression and set pieces and like the layout of the games in general, aside from the mechanics, they are very different. But one of the things I noticed when playing this, especially in the Nibelheim section, is there's more, I don't know, there's more God of War Ragnarok to it, which that probably sounds weird to me, but I know because you love that game. But there were a few sections where, like, look at this wall adorned with like yellow thingy-majigs. You can climb it. It's like more varied movement, which I guess in a game like this, it's not that bad. And then there was another puzzle where I needed to like drag an extractor fan around and like suck the Mako juices out of the area before I could progress. And I think Remake had less of that stuff, and this is trying to make a more concerted effort to be varied when you're walking in what is essentially like glorified Final Fantasy corridors, experiencing narrative and doing fights. But also there's a lot of fan service there, and it's constantly surprising. Because it feels like this game could have ridden on the coattails of its own nostalgia in a lot of ways, but it's kind of doing the opposite by subverting your memory at every turn.
Yeah.
Which I think is why people find it so compelling. Like this Nibelheim sequence, there's also a boss towards the end called the Materia Guardian, which you fight with Sephiroth. And in the original, you only ever really see Sephiroth in battle when you're either fighting him or he's like calling Cloud a little bitch, like immediately before he's like dying. But in this, you can take direct control of him, and that's quite like a liberating power fantasy. And this boss battle against this boss in the original, you did not fight with Sephiroth, or even at this point in the story. So they've like retrofitted that into the game in a different way, which is quite interesting. And there's a line that Sephiroth says to Cloud that is astonishingly horny, that I'm going to have to reference here. I think Cloud says, no, Sephiroth says, like, you're practically panting. And then Cloud says, I'm excited. And then Sephiroth says, such a puppy. And I was like,
oh my
Jesus Christ, Calm
down.
Come on. But no, like, completely off tangent. This game is still excruciatingly horny as well. So if you like that about the first one, the battles are like iterative. The UI is white and pretty now. Oh, that's something I'd love to touch on too. They've like made the UI far more I don't know what the word is, like alive, I suppose. Like when you press triangle to look in the menus now, like all of the characters are walking towards the camera and like emoting and moving around, and it seems to change depending on how many people are in your party. And that like combines with like a more detailed like enemy intel system and like dossiers filled with lore and shit. And there's a crafting system now, which I didn't get to fiddle with, but it just seems to be a way to craft like potions and Phoenix Downs and ethers and stuff from the resources you get when you're exploring the open world portions.
Okay.
Which is probably quite handy because it saves you having to go back to the shop, and it will probably lend itself to crafting weapons and stuff, which aside, the first game had like the materia and like upgrading your weapons, but I'd prefer I'd prefer a more in-depth or like malleable system, and this seems to be going to that.
So the first section you played, the Nibelheim, was very like traditional linear, like the first one, but then you also played the more open world part. So talk about what that was like.
So it was quite jarring. Kind of like the party opens a door out to Junon Harbor, and then they're like, we need to get to the airfield, and the cutscene kind of just looms over to this familiar scenery, and then the game kind of starts, and it's like, oh, you can get there, but the Square Enix PR had like curated this build where there were 4 large monsters in the area that we had to kill, and there were like yellow dots on the map, and that was what we were expected to do. But the first thing I did was jump on my chocobo, which can be customized, which is super cool. Everyone in your party gets one, so if you hop on a chocobo, everyone's just cruising down like on these giant grey chickens. I went to like chocobo ranches, followed baby chocobos to unlock like fast travel points and so on, and just like collected resources and tried to have a scrap. And one thing that I noticed with the open world stuff here is it feels more alive than the stuff in Final Fantasy 16 did, where a lot of its side content or open world exploration was almost like MMO-esque, whereas this leans into that like melodramatic anime personality that Final Fantasy 7 does so well. Like when you're fighting new enemies or discovering something new in the environment, you've got this new AI companion called Mai, who just sounds like an anime girl basically, who's like, this is like the giant wandering chicken, and they wander around in the summer and all of that shit. And then like there's a lot of like really cutesy banter between the different characters and stuff I appreciated because I love Final Fantasy 7. And I got to a point where the game told me you can't go this way, so go and fight the monsters. So that's what I did, and part of me is curious what the open world in this game will be like, because at the moment I think it's going to be like a balance between the open world guff of something like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and the more creative character driven stuff that you'd see in something like Red Dead Redemption 2. It seems to be wanting to strike a balance between that. It's not just content for the sake of content from what I can see, or at least I hope so, because they didn't show me a lot of the world, but going into the map and like zooming out, it seems relatively large, especially if that was one region.
Yeah,
need a drink of water. I've been gaming too much, Aaron.
It's an interesting position for this game to be in, because it has to a large degree stay true to the original, but it also has to build off of 7 Remake, but it also has to sort of answer to 16, or like evolve from 16 too. Like it's sort of spinning a lot of plates.
Because it's a main entry, right? It feels like it's occupying a similar trajectory. Because I know some people who preferred 16 to 7 Remake and vice versa. I was kind of in the latter camp, I think, as much as I enjoyed 16. Because the way this game builds its open world and builds its story feels very different to 16. Like it's more party-based, it's more like banter-driven, and it's trying to be less serious while it also is quite serious. And it isn't doing that thing that Final Fantasy 16 has to do, which is build a new world and build this new lore. It's like expanding on something that already exists. And I think that kind of helps to make it more compelling. And it's coming out so soon after 16 too. Like February of next year.
Yeah. I'm excited. Like I said, 7 Remake was the only Final Fantasy I finished. I played a lot of 16, but I didn't finish it, and I don't think I will. I feel like I got my fill of that
How
game.
far did you get? How far did you get?
I mean, I played like 30 hours of it. So
okay, so pretty far.
I was pretty far into it, yeah. But
that
I
game's
just
got some filler.
it stopped. It stopped changing. It didn't get more interesting to me, and but 7 Remake did. I was really pulled forward by the story and getting more characters to play with, and I wish that it had more gear progression. I think that was
does, from what
okay. Good, that's good. Yeah, because both Remake and 16 had horrible gear progression. Pointless.
No, 16 didn't need to have it. It was like you had that one merchant, didn't you? And it's like, well, I've already got good gear, so crafting all of this is completely pointless.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am hoping that Rebirth has more interesting choices to make about what you equip.
I hope have a transmog system because I want to use the Buster Sword, but it has the lowest stats. So I'd love to like mess around with those cosmetics.
Okay.
Give it loot. Give it loot. Well, that's what we need.
Is that weird little kid that does the AR missions back?
Not that I can see. I'm hoping not, because he did not fit in.
No, that was weird.
I was like, what's this Final Fantasy 13 looking ass doing in Final Fantasy 7? Hi, Cloud. Do you want to add in your crypto? It's like, fuck off.
Do you really think it's going to be 100 hours?
I think it's going to be 100 hours doing all of the filler stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think this will be similar to Remake, where maybe it's like 40, 50 hours if you do a sizable amount of the main side quests and the story. That's my hope anyway, because I was quite a completionist with 7 Remake because it was realistic to do it the way it did its side quests and filler stuff. But this is aiming to be like a more large, ambitious open world, and that's still, even after seeing the open world and being quite excited about it, that's still the thing I'm most worried about. I'm happy for the story to go anywhere and for these characters to do anything. I trust Square Enix to confuse me and make me mad and make me happy with all of that stuff. It's the stuff around it that I'm more confused about.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I'm on the same page. I'm worried about too much filler in the open world stuff, but also in Remake there sure was a lot of running back and forth down the same hallway.
There sure was, especially towards the end. There was some stuff to do with Don Corneo and some other new characters where it's like, oh, you need to do this before you go to Shinra HQ. They could have chopped those 5 hours out of that game
for sure
easily, but that was because it felt like the whole first game was in Midgar, and before it came out it was like, that's a very small part of Final Fantasy VII. Like, how on earth are they going to make an entire game from that? And with this, they almost have the opposite problem because they've said it's going to end at the Forgotten Ancient Temple, which is where some big stuff happens. But even still, in the context of the original game, that's the end of the first disc. So, will the third go back to being a more linear story-driven kind of game? But also carry over this open world and incorporate it into whatever the third ends up being called. It just raises more questions. Yeah.
Well, good thing we don't have to worry about the third one for a while.
Final Fantasy VII Reunion, you heard it here first.
Cool. I'm excited about this. You've got me hyped. Anything else you want to mention before we go?
It's real good. Make Aerith and Tifa gay. That's all I want this game to do. Listen to me, Nomura. But
please,
no,
Nomura.
I'm excited
We're
for
begging.
This. We're begging, please. But no, I'm excited for this. I'm hyped. I'm a sim. Like, give me more Final Fantasy VII.
Awesome.
Full preview on the site and all that jazz.
Full preview link down in the description. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell, and visit us at thegamer.com for more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's The Gamer, no space.
won't.